Dr. Hovind, I love your doctoral thesis. I've torn it to pieces with house and gaffle. I can't remember when I last pissed myself laughing. It's a good thing the thesis mopped the piss off the floor.
Welcome to part 51 of this read-through and peer review of Kent Hovind's doctoral dissertation, which was published on wikileaks.org on December 9th, 2009. If you have not yet seen any of the previous installments in this series, then I recommend that you go back and see those first, as in this episode I will start off exactly where I finished off in the last. In the last episode, Kent asserted that the teaching of evolution in public science classes is what is making American scientists somewhat unmarked. In fact, it's clear to the reader or viewer that the very opposite is true. In this episode, Kent continues to keep it relevant and starts to tell us all about the moon. Time to learn something new. Go on, Kent. On the trip to the moon, they were so concerned that there might be some type of bacteria life on the moon. Did you get your young son Eric to write that one for you, Kent? I'm sure the readers and viewers will agree that it does in fact sound as though it was written by somebody still back at school, probably in the 5th grade. But do continue. They spent extra money to isolate the moon rocks when they got them in the spacecraft, and when they got them back on Earth. Yes, Kent, and would you like to explain to us why that does not sound like a reasonable precaution? They were, after all, recovering material from a location not on Earth. It is not unreasonable to believe that there may be something that they could have brought back that could wipe out all life on Earth. So, spending a few extra dollars to make sure it didn't, well, I'd say that's money well spent. But obviously you wouldn't. Continue. They will do the same with all other planets. They will say, oh, there might be life there. We need to protect those rocks. Well, Kent, I don't think that's really what they're saying, do you? I mean, after all, there's a shitload more rocks where those rocks came from. A whole planet full. I think the general idea is to protect everything on Earth from what might be on those rocks. But that's just my assumption. One of the astronauts offered to eat some of the moon dust on the way back to prove that there was no life on it, and that it was perfectly sterile. Yes, Kent, I'm sure they did. And as there's only a handful of people that have actually set foot on the moon, 12 to be exact, I thought that it would be reasonably easy to look up who actually made that statement. And as there does not appear to be any actual reference of who actually made that statement anywhere, I'm kind of guessing that either you made it up or it's just something you've kind of heard. But either way, it's just bullshit. But anyhow, it is a point to note, though, that the astronauts returning from the EVs on the surface of the moon brought back with them an extraordinary amount of dust, not just in sample cases, but also on their spacesuits, and it covered the entire interior of the lunar lander. So the astronauts were more than exposed to it. They would have been covered in it, they would be breathing it, they would certainly have ingested it in some way, shape or form. This is, of course, why they spent so much time in quarantine once they returned from the moon. Just in case they'd brought something back with them, ingested it, and they were carrying some strange moon pathogen. Of course, we now know that this was not the case. We now know that moon rock is sterile. But at the time, we weren't taking any chances. But do go on. bring back a Mars rock, or a Jupiter rock. I'll eat it or lick it. Kent, you do realize that Jupiter is a gas giant, don't you? I thought you might know that. After all, you did teach science for 15 years. And yes, I know that it is theorized that Jupiter does in fact have a rocky core. However, it is surrounded by a huge amount of metallic hydrogen. This is hydrogen that is under so much pressure that it undergoes a phase transition. It is a liquid that essentially acts as if it's a metal. Of course, Kent, you are free to go lick it if you wish. I don't think there'll be many in the scientific community that will object too much. But do carry on. There is no life on the other planet. Which other planet, Kent? The year is 2010. We know of lots of planets. And we believe there's a great many more that we don't actually know about. If you're going to make a bold sweeping assertion like that, you have to be specific. But then again, Kent, that's not exactly your style now, is it? I'll let you continue. Life doesn't evolve. There is no evidence for evolution, and it wastes a lot of our money because they've got the wrong thinking. Really, Kent? Are you sure? From where I'm sitting, it looks as though they've got an awful lot of right thinking, certainly compared with you. Anyhow, they thought the moon was millions of years old, so they put giant landing pads on the spacecraft. Well, that can't be true now, can it, Kent? You see, I'm pretty well sure they thought it was billions of years old. Not millions, billions. I think somewhere around about 4.3, 4.4 billion years. I'd have to look it up. I suggest you do too. As for giant landing pads, I think most people are familiar with a picture of the lunar lander, and will agree that they're not exactly that giant now, are they? Anyhow, they wasted a lot of money because they thought the cosmic dust would be so deep on the moon. Actually, Kent, I think they had a pretty good guess on the depth of the dust on the moon. They had, after all, landed several spacecraft on the moon prior to the lunar lander. The lunar lander was the first time they'd landed people on the moon. And I think it's a fair assertion to say that they put large landing pads, not giant landing pads, but large landing pads on the lunar lander to stop it toppling over. After all, they wanted to get those people back. But do carry on. The cosmic dust layer indicated that the moon was only 6,000 or 7,000 years old. We will discuss this in further detail later in this book. Oh, good. So I won't debunk that piece of crap here. I'll save it for later. That way I can give it a proper gutting. But I'll let you finish this chapter. Christians need to stand up for what is right. I believe God's word is the truth, and all real scientific evidence validates it. Really, Kent. You can believe what you want. I once met a man who believed he was Napoleon. Unfortunately, he was 6'2" and couldn't speak a word of French. As for scientific evidence, or real scientific evidence, I think you'll find that what you reading those 5th grade science books is somewhat dumbed down for school kids. But anyhow, we'll leave it there for now. And we'll move on to chapter 4 in the next episode. And we'll hope that, unlike this chapter, it isn't simply just rehash crap that you've taken from previous chapter and copy and pasted into it.